Fellas, have you ever seen those before and after pictures of when a woman's had a BBL done and you're like, damn, well, buckle up because the rear end of this Jeep's going to look just like that after we get done doing a little slicing and dicing on this frame chop bumper from Icon Dynamics. Now go to a Jeep meet and look around and it will be a sea of Smitty built XRC style rear bumpers. It's literally the most popular aftermarket Jeep bumper that you'll find. So with this build, we really wanted to do something that was a little different than that so it would stand out from the crowd. I really like how this turned out. In addition to looking cool, it also has some real world functionality in that we're trying to reduce some of that bulk in the rear end and shorten up that overhang so you're not catching it up as you're dropping off of obstacles and stuff like that when you're out actually doing some off-roading. This is the Icon Vehicle Dynamics Comp Series rear bumper. We can see that it's got these built-in shackle tabs and a high clearance built-in receiver hitch, which is a really nice touch. It also comes with this semi-gloss powder coat, which is, you got to see it, it's so much nicer than a lot of the powder coat you see out there on these other vehicles, and they just include that standard with it. We can also see it's just got a really great build quality and a minimalistic design with very little overhang off the rear, and even better yet, it's really affordable. Even with the powder coat, this rear bumper was cheaper than a lot of other bumpers out there that aren't powder coated, so I loved that aspect of it too, to fit in with our ballin' on a budget build. Real quick, if you're looking for a detailed step-by-step video, that's not going to be what you're going to find here. So now let's get started. And for some people, this step won't apply, but for those of you, if you have a factory hitch, go ahead and remove that here. It's just 3 bolts on the back side. Sometimes the clearance is a little tight. And then you'll have that off, and we can get started on the bolts that are located on the inner frame rail on the back of the bumper here. You can see there's 2 on each side inside there. They can be a little bit hard to get to. You might have to use some different combinations of ratcheting wrenches and sockets. And then when you're done with that, you can move to the outer frame rails here. There's also 2 bolts on that side, 2 bolts over here on this side. And you might need a breaker bar to get those loose. They've been on there for a while. A little bit of penetrating lube will help. But the bumper will come right off. You'll see there's not much to it there. Make sure with this bumper that you go to the website and you download the installation guide, because in here is where we are going to find the template that we're going to need to print and cut out, so that way we know exactly where we need to chop on that bumper. Print that off, cut it out, line up all the holes and everything just as it shows on the diagram, and then mark where you're going to make your cut on the frame rail. Hey y'all, before we start chopping on the frame, we want to make sure we got the right tools to get that done. I'll be using a demo saw. I've got a blade here designed for cutting steel. Get yourself a pack of these, you'll need a few. For the angle grinder, we've got ourselves a cutoff wheel. Also get yourself a few of these, you're gonna go through them. We've got a grinding wheel for doing some finishing work, and a sanding disc, which is nice for the cleanup at the very end. Trust me, you'll thank me later. No turning back now, kids. It's time to get out the power tools. As we can see here, I've got a reciprocating saw, sometimes called a demo saw, and I kind of just go back and forth between this and the angle grinder depending on really what fits, what makes sense. There's no right or wrong to it. You know, I kind of just would measure twice, cut once, maybe cut 3 times, you know, just kind of figure out what you're doing and make sure that you know, you're not cutting into something on the other side that you want to keep. So just really make sure you're paying attention to what you're doing and take your time. All right, one thing to just make note of for those of you who aren't super experienced with something like an angle grinder here with this cutoff wheel on it, just make sure that you're always paying attention to what direction you're throwing the debris. You always want to make sure that it's going down and away from you as much as possible, and you absolutely have to wear eyewear with one of these tools. I've seen it time and time again where the disc gets hot, overheats, snaps, and shoots a chunk up in someone's face. All right, quick tip for those of you that are thinking about doing a frame chop style bumper. We already drew our lines out for our template over here, and I started cutting, and then I realized that what I really needed to do first was get this center section out. So we went ahead and hacked it here, hacked it there, and that's gonna free up and give us the room that we need to cut that angle on both the inside and the outside, as well as cutting right here too. So go ahead and get that middle section out first, and then come around and worry about cutting your end caps. Just wanted to show you real quick kind of mid-process here as you just keep kind of cutting and clearancing and making room and getting it to, so you can reach the areas that you need to cut. Here's where we want to switch over from that cutoff wheel to a grinding disc or a flap sanding disc, and just go through and clean up all your edges and deburr everything and get it nice, clean, and ready for priming and painting to keep that rust away. Now I'll be honest, this is really overkill, but that's kind of the name of the game, and how I do things is I like to make it all look very clean, very OEM, and have everything nice and tight. You really could have stopped about 90 steps ago on this and the bumper probably still would fit. But again, like I said, I kind of like making sure that if I'm going to do a job, I do it right. And so here I'm just cleaning up some of this extra bits and pieces that are still on there. And here's the aftermath of all that cutting, chopping, and snipping. We can see, hey, it ain't perfect, but we've done plenty of test fitting, taking it off, putting it on, trim here, sand a little there to get it just right. From here, you can just put the bumper on, install the 2 factory bolts that are on the outside of the frame rail. They provide you with one more clip nut that goes inside that oval hole right there, and you bolt the bumper on. It couldn't be any simpler at this point. It's time for Jeep History Lessons with Johnny Ruckus. We're going to talk about 3 companies. One you've definitely heard of, one you've probably heard of, and a third you might not even know exists. So back in prehistoric times of the Jeep world, there's a company who emerged from the ashes and became dominant called Poison Spyder. You've definitely heard of this company. Their bumpers, their products, everything they do, all their armor is everywhere. Now fast forward from the Paleo-Meso-Anthropology Jeep Atomic era to, mid 2000s or so, and Poison Spyder was probably the biggest brand out there. Along came a company called Trans-American, who is the parent company to 4-Wheel Parts. They came in and bought up Poison Spyder. Many hardcore Jeepers pronounced that this would be the end of the world, that American-made Jeep products were gone forever. Then a couple fellows from Poison Spyder went and started a brand new company called Crawler Concepts. You've probably heard of that company as well. They've built a bunch of really great armor and bumpers, and they're littered all over a whole bunch of great rock crawlers. You might even recognize a bunch of these bumpers because they look eerily similar to the Poison Spyder bumpers that they used to manufacture with their old company. But as they say, all good things must come to an end, and Crawler Concepts, I believe, got themselves into a little bit of a bind, struggled with some growing pains, and eventually had to close their doors. That brings us to our third company, Icon Dynamics. You probably have not heard of this company, although they're big players in the suspension world. This was their opportunity to swoop in and save the day. They bought up all of those armor designs from Crawler Concepts, and now probably I'd say at least 60% of everything that Crawler Concepts used to carry is now part of Icon Dynamics armor division, or whatever the heck they call it. So what does all this mean? The same looks, quality, and styles that you've liked forever are all still available, just under a new name. Go check them out. Now, I'm not going to lie, that was a little bit of an involved install. It did take me 2 days, but it's nothing that any do-it-yourselfer couldn't handle with some basic power tools and a little bit of know-how. Now, something to consider is that anytime you start making permanent modifications to your Jeep, you have to understand that you're now committed. You're going to be stuck with that bumper for quite some time. And what I mean by that is, just think down the road. You might have your Jeep for a bit, and trends may change, styles may change, your purpose of what you're using your Jeep for may change, and something that you may want to do later on might not work anymore because of the modifications that you're doing now. It's not the end of the world, it's just something you do need to think about. So I hope you like this Jeep BBL edition of Project Night Fury. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and click the subscribe button, maybe like it, share it with some friends, do all that fun stuff, and we'll see you next time. Peace.